In this Retro Game Mage review, we get psyched about killing some Nazis. For most gamers, this title needs no introduction, as it's basically known as being the grandfather of all first-person shooters. But we won't have any assumed knowledge here, since some of you watching this review may be checking it out for the first time. Originally released in May of 1992 for PC, Wolfenstein 3D was the breakout game for id Software. Looking to shift the then lesser-known dev company in a more violent direction, programmer John Romero looked to the 1981 stealth platformer Castle Wolfenstein as the inspiration for this fast-paced action game. With Romero's vision of what Wolfenstein could be paired with John Carmack's newly built game engine, the result was unbelievable and quite unlike anything on the market at the time. I remember being a kid and going over my uncle's house and playing this for hours. You would have to unplug the damn computer to peel me away from this game, I swear. Just think, prior to this, most games on PC were text-based adventures, point-and-click adventures, RPG games, and so on. So just imagine the shock and awe this game created when it first hit the shelves at your local tech store. It sold like crazy and was met with critical acclaim. This was the first ever first-person shooter, and it was nuts. Fast-paced, bloody, immersive, and just over-the-top with innovation. Now, the version we're looking at here is pretty faithful to the original. Upon first release, this game had just 3 episodes, but that was quickly followed up with 3 more. So this 2003 Game Boy Advance release, of course, has all 6 episodes in one. Most people who were there in the early 90s will tell you that one of the big aspects that made this game such a huge success was the Super Upgrades Pack, which released in 1993, which included 815 fan-made levels, a map editor, and a random map generator, which is pretty cool even by today's standards if you ask me. This GBA release does not have any of that, which is a bit of a disappointment, but at least it does have all 6 episodes, as well as the blood and Nazi imagery. Blood and Nazi imagery being 2 things not found in the 1994 SNES release, because, well, you know how Nintendo is. But I guess by 2003, the gaming industry had opened up a bit when it came to violence, and not to mention that idiot Jack Thompson probably had his plate full with Grand Theft Auto. And so Nintendo was probably like, it's fine to have blood in this one. No one is going to challenge you on violence when we're talking about killing Hitler, because, you know, Nazis. But anyways, let's look at this game here. So the game's premise is pretty simple. You're an American prisoner who has escaped and must fight your way out of the Castle Wolfenstein by shooting your way through Nazi soldiers, dogs, Frankenstein's monsters, and of course, Hitler wizards. When choosing your stage, the game will ask, how tough are you? And based on your response, the game will alter difficulty. This is where you get your first taste of that Romero charm, as it's not enough to simply just have easy, normal, and hard, but instead we have, can I play, Daddy? Don't hurt me, bring 'em on, and I am death incarnate. Each episode has you going through a set amount of floors in which you progress through by finding keys to unlock elevator doors, and at the end of each episode you're faced with some pretty memorable boss fights, which get capped off with a replay kill cam. How cool is that? To know that the kill cam was first introduced in the first ever FPS game. That's amazing. There's no verticality to this game at all. We wouldn't see that until id Software's next big project, which was Doom. But in this one, everything was kept on a horizontal plane, which still made for a good FPS experience. Now, if you're ready to get lost in a brick-clad environment, well, this GBA port is going to be a real treat for you, as there's no map in the pause menu. So, yeah, it's very easy to get turned around and end up going in circles in this game. An overview map would have been great here, and I'm not sure why they opted to not include it. The aforementioned SNES port did have an overview map which was opened by pressing select, and it could be argued that changes had to be made due to the fact that the GBA had 2 fewer buttons than the SNES, but they could have put the map in the pause menu, so I guess it was just a design choice. I think one of the best aspects of this game has got to be the character's face in the middle of the head-up display. As you take damage, his appearance will reflect that, which was just a great move by the developers and was definitely a standout feature at the time. They'd go on to make that one of the bigger features of Doom. Now, portraits of Hitler's ugly mug hanging around the castle isn't just all for looks. Many of these wall arts contain hidden rooms. It'll have you pressing B on just about every wall portrait you see, and often you'll be desperate to find a secret room full of medkits or turkey dinners as your character's face is bleeding out with low HP. Yes, you pick up turkey dinners for health, and for some reason they're everywhere. Hitler's castle is just littered with turkey and treasure. The treasure isn't so odd, as we know Nazis were big on collecting stuff, as we saw in Indiana Jones, right? Plus, it's an easy way to improve your score, which this game also has. But the turkey dinners definitely seem odd in hindsight. Upon completing each level, you're shown your time along with a par, and also your completion percentages for dead enemies, secrets, and treasure. All this feeding into the game's replayability. So, I recorded my gameplay footage for this review through the Game Boy player on GameCube, but I think it's important to mention that I also spent some time with it on my backlit original GBA, and it really did feel at home there. Possibly the most comfortable place to play Wolfenstein 3D in my opinion. Regardless of how you play it though, this game will never feel like it did back then if you're playing it for the first time now, but I don't think that matters. This game is legendary and was put together by a team of legendary developers. Its innovations echo all the way through every first-person shooter up to present day, and I think every gamer owes it to themselves to go back and experience this piece of history. Whether you play it on Game Boy Advance or the dozen other platforms it's available on, you're going to have fun. This game holds up and has no real learning curve. It's basic enough to just pick up and play, and yet it still manages to be challenging and keep you entertained. We couldn't have GoldenEye, Black Ops, Splatoon, or whatever FPS game title you want to insert here if it weren't for good old Wolfenstein 3D. I mean, did I mention there's Hitler wizards?